Okay, so let's see. We have so far 125 in the room, and it kind of maybe seems to climb in the last 5 minutes, but we'll see. Part of it, is mental models is not a term that is familiar to many, and it hasn't been in circulation for that long. In fact, it was introduced in a commencement speech by a guy called Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger is a smart investor. He is a partner with Warren Buffett, if you're familiar with him. He is in his 90s, quite a wise cookie. So he came up with that so if you've not come across it, it's okay, because we will do a deep dive, and I'm sure at the end of it, you realize just you've known it all along. We just now have to consciously be aware of it and use it. But just to get some orientation, can I have a show of hand? How many have come across the term before? Mental models? I see one hand in my screen, but I only see a small portion of the number of people online. Okay, so it's not very familiar, but you'll soon realize just how familiar it is when we go forward. In my invite, I mentioned about if you don't have a mental model, it's like a blindfolded person, and you spin the globe, and then you put your finger on the globe, and hopefully you can touch a country, whether it's India, whether it's Lebanon, whether it's even America or China. No matter how big they are, chances are remote you will actually touch that. Why? Because you don't have a mental model. You're just trying to do it blindly. That's really the essence of this. And if you're going through life and you haven't got enough of those, then you are making life a lot harder for yourself. And often your choices and decisions are not really optimum. So let's dive into it and see when it becomes clear to you. So most of us have a collection of facts. Like when you were at school, they taught us lots of facts, and especially in geography and history and so on. And you try and retain it with a young mind. You can retain a lot of facts and figures, but they're only good enough for the exam. Once the exam passes, you find most of it evaporate. And really, facts by themselves, like bits of information, have very little value. And that's what we're going to discover with these mental models, that we need to have some structure so that everything we learn add value and becomes a tool for future use. So let's have a look. Let's see what you already have. Don't know how many of you realized you have already some mental models. Let me put this picture in front of you. If you don't have a mental model about cooking, all you see here is a collection of vegetables, right? How many on the call consider themselves a good cook or reasonably good cook, whatever you think? Can I have a show of hands? Oh, I see quite a few. If you are in halfway experienced cooking, you will know there are certain steps you take to make sure a meal comes out okay. Say we're talking about some vegetable dish. You can also add meat. I don't have it there. But usually, where do you start with cooking? If you're making, say, a soup or a vegetable dish, what would be the starting point? Now, if you have a mental model, you'll have a clear starting point. What do I do first with the garlic, the onion, the vegetables? Anybody? Let's take an experienced cook. Sridhar raised his hand very quickly. I assume you're a good cook. What would you do, Sridhar?
Normally, I will cook the rice first.
Oh, okay. But the rice is a separate dish. We're looking at the vegetables.
Then dal and the vegetables. Normally, okay, I put the vegetables. Normally, I use sweet pumpkin most of the time. or cucumber, this kind of a carrot, this kind of a things that are doing.
Okay. Well, let me give you my mental model, and then I'm sure you realize you're doing it. You normally would start with the chopped garlic and onion, and you put it in oil. I put it in olive oil. The garlic and the onion infuse into the oil and give it the flavor. And just before they brown or anything, they just go soft. Then you start adding the vegetables. They call blanching, where you add a bit of water and you fry those as well together with it. Let it cook a bit. Then you add more water and maybe a stock cube or two, depending how much flavor you want. If you do it this way, 9 out of 10, you'll have a decent dish. Whether you eventually make a soup out of it, eat it as vegetables, add meat, whatever you want to do. I'm talking because I don't have the meat. But if you were having meat, you probably want to fry the meat a little bit with the onion and the olive oil. Just again, seal it, and then you would add the vegetables. So anybody who's watched the wife cooking or mother cooking or they're a good cook will know there is a process. And if you don't know it, you will cook sort of blindly, and usually it comes out all wrong. Or one flavor sort of overpower everything else. I didn't know how powerful rosemary is until I added a good pinch of it. Then everything tasted of rosemary. So you end up with a mental model that says, if you want to cook successfully, do these, don't do that. And this sticks with you. If I say to you, what's a pizza? You all had pizza. Everybody has a mental model. A pizza is a bread base with tomato, cheese, and then anything else you want to have on top of it. You don't try and figure it out or guess it. You know roughly what it is. Everybody has a mental model about colors. You know what goes with what, right? You wouldn't, certain colors, you would not wear them together. So you make choices. That is another mental model. So these are really important to make life manageable. Okay, so you're using those. These aren't particularly useful. They're handy, but there are some very powerful models that we will come to. And if you have them, you'll find most of your choices in life and decisions are guided by a wisdom that you don't think about consciously. So you do need to have more than one. You know the saying that says, the man with the hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you only have one mental model, then everything you look at would look like a nail. So if you take, I don't know, a chiropractor, the person, I don't know if you know what the chiropractor is, but every time you go to certain medical people, they will only solve a problem from what their mental model or their experience tells them. And sometimes you need much wider experience to help. That's why, frankly, the medical profession is problematic. Today, when you go to a hospital or a clinic, they would never consider natural medicine. They would never consider homeopathic, if that is something you'd like to think about. They would never consider what kind of food you eat as a solution. Their mental models only what they got taught in the university, and that's it. So if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you have a set of tools, you make a good carpenter or a plumber or whatever your profession is. You have something for every situation. So you may have your own personal models that are also harming you. Imagine if you have a mental model that says money is the source of all evil, or money can get stolen or lost so easily. You've all heard about the bank runs where people dash and queue to get their money. I think if you ask Michel, I don't know if he's on the call, Lebanon had that issue where your money is not safe. Now, if that becomes a something you're afraid of and becomes a motto of yours, you put your money where? Maybe under the mattress. Now, putting money under the mattress is far more troublesome because it can be stolen easily and it certainly depreciates with every passing year. So that's a personal model. A lot of people, by the way, have that model. Or you might say mental model, don't talk to strangers. Now, up to a point that is a good safety thing, but up to a point. But you cannot become an adult and still have that, aversion. So they reflect your experience. Be careful you're not carrying too many of them that are there hampering your progress as a person. So let's take useful example, and I've got them at random. I would suggest you need a number of models, maybe 20, 30, some people have 90, but you will find even if you had 100 mental models, 10 of them will carry most of the weight. They will solve most of your problem. The rest are nice to have. So we need to focus on the powerful one and don't need to have a huge collection. And you will find if you have the powerful one, they will come in without you calling them when the situation arises. So if you really absorb this, I guarantee you the few that we'll share here will come up next time you face a situation where you need to make a decision, make a choice, etc. So let's take the first model, important versus urgent. Okay, this is when you're facing a decision to make. Then this matrix, don't let the details complicate it for you. What's the difference between important versus urgent? Would you say, let's say exercise, is that important or urgent? Feel free to speak. So it's a two-way discussion. Is exercise important or urgent?
Important.
Important. Okay. Let's say maybe somebody, you got a message, somebody called you and they want you to call them back. Okay. Depending on the situation, that can be, it sounds urgent. Whenever somebody calls, especially you are in a discussion and your phone rings. I don't know why the phone has an insane influence on us. When it rings, we feel we have to pick it up. Even you might be speaking to your spouse, you may be speaking to a client, and we excuse each other for leaving the important, focusing on the urgent. So remember this, every time you have a choice or a decision to make, if it is urgent and important, definitely you have to do. If it's not urgent but important, you plan and you have to put it in your schedule like an exercise. If it's neither important or urgent, get rid of it. Give it to somebody else to do. And if it is not urgent and not important here, eliminate it. Okay? I don't need to deal with this. Forget about it. So every time somebody push you for a quick decision, this is urgent, ask yourself, how important is that? Because unfortunately in life we'll find the urgent over, if you like, power the important, and then you reach a point in life where you've addressed all the urgent and all the important got pushed to one side and you have a problem. Let's take another one. I don't know, some of us are better than others with this. Visualize all the dominoes. What do you mean by that? When you push a domino, you can see from the picture, it cascades and affects a lot of things. So everything you do, every decision you make, every conversation you have has ramification. It touches other things. Have you really considered before you opened your mouth, before you acted, what other areas are impacted? So sometimes, let's say we're annoyed with a client and maybe they're not paying and I say, I'm going to sue them. Okay, that's easy. That's your first domino. Now, nobody takes that lightly. And if you haven't thought of all the repercussion and the domino effect, you could end up with a counter court case. You could end up with blacklisting or banning. You could end up with all sorts of things. So there are domino effects that you better not jump on that decision before you looked at all the aspects of what can happen if you take that decision. So remember, we covered urgent, important, domino effect. I'm just trying to see if we can, maybe the 8 or 9 or 10 I'll cover with you. We can cover a lot more. But if you stick with those 10, they will carry 90% of the workload. So we don't need 100 of them. We just need maybe about 10. This is one of the mental models actually that is most known. The person most known for it is Jeff Bezos. He's the one who articulated it. They make a lot of decisions, some big, some small. He has one criteria. Is the decision reversible? If it is, I will act quickly. Because if I don't like the results, I can reverse it, backtrack. If you decide to, let's say, open a huge warehouse in a city, but it's not easily reversible. You've made a big investment and you can't go back on it. Now you're committed. So every time you decide, if I do this, can I reverse it? If I can, feel free to act quickly, obviously taking the one before it, the domino effect, and don't do something that could have a ramification. If it's not reversible, be very, very careful how you take it. So now we got 3 mental models. Just let's quickly recap. Mental model number 1, tell me. But you have to come off mute. Some of them, if you are speaking, but I can't hear you.
The time management matrix.
Time management matrix. I don't know if I did that.
The important.
It is a matrix, but it's urgent versus important. No? Time might be a part of it, but it's urgent versus important. So that may involve time, but it doesn't have to. Next one.
Domino's effect.
Domino's effect. Make sure you know what are the ramifications. And now, is it reversible, my decision? That actually tend to be really important in an enterprise, in an organization. Let's take another one. Bias for action. This is I can tell when I deal with some of you who really has that well ingrained and who doesn't. And if you have bias for action, what typically do you do? Let's say we need to find out something, call a client. Those with the bias for action, the moment you say we need to call so-and-so, their hand is almost itching to pick up the phone. They have a bias for action. If you don't have a bias for action, what do? Should I call? No, I'll call later. I'll call in the afternoon. I don't feel like it now. And I don't know how they would react. And they may say this, they may say that. What happens when you don't do that? The moment you put it for later, you start getting anxiety. It starts to rob you of your attention, and that actually end up being so counterproductive. So if I read this to you, inaction breeds doubt. Nothing clears doubt and fear like action. If you, I used to listen to somebody who would say, if you want to know if a girl wants to go out with you, go knock on the door and say, would you go out with me? If she slams the door in your face, you got your answer. Finish, you move on. If she says, yeah, sure, whatever, you got your answer. Sitting at home, pondering it is not very clever. So, inaction breeds fear, and action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit home and think about it. Go out and get busy. So anytime you have uncertainty, doubt, fear, etc., nothing like it, just act. And by the way, even when you act and it goes all wrong, you've also learned a lesson. So there's no excuse. Those who have bias for action end up being the successful people. Haja, please stop the car. If you want to stay with us, don't drive and watch a video. Okay, Haja? Yeah, just go sit somewhere, enjoy it, but don't go around driving and then we have a regretful situation. What I'm sharing with you is important, but not that important that you risk your health. Okay, let's go to the next one. Minimize regret. This one, it may seem like it's a long term, but actually it applies at every turn in life. So how do you minimize regrets? We do maybe 10, maybe 1,000 things in a day. This could be criteria. If I do or don't do this, would I have regrets later? So here, put this question to yourself. In so many years, will I regret taking or not taking this action, whatever the action is? So when you are eventually, hopefully a long time away, on your deathbed or in a hospital and, think maybe the end is in sight, you have to say to yourself, right now, not when you're on that bed, what am I doing now or not doing that will minimize my regret when the end comes? Okay. This one, actually, I've learned quite recently through an accident. Sometimes you have an accident or you have an occasion that was totally out of the blue, but it leaves a kind of a scar with you. And you think, oh, I better be careful. I don't want this to repeat. I better be careful. Then one day I said to myself, for the last 50 years, this hasn't happened. And now something happened, whatever that is. It could be major or minor. To me, when something happens once in 10 years or 50 years, depending how old you are, it's a black swan. You're all familiar with that concept. They're rare, are black swans. And maybe better to ignore it. It can happen, but it's like, one maybe airliners fell out of the sky somewhere 10 years ago. Are you going to be afraid of flying? But when it happens to you personally, let's say you have an accident in your car or something, but you are a good driver, maybe you have not had accidents in so many years, you don't want that to become a scar that haunts you, because you become uncertain as a driver. You start dithering, you start to be over careful, and there's nothing worse than an over careful driver. It's better to ignore it and take that risk. Next. This is an interesting one. I see it every day when we have discussion with various people. Let me show you this picture and see if you figure it out and explain to me. So somebody, if you forget the left side, somebody seems to have decided that people who eat ice cream get sunburned. In their mind, they made it that the ice cream causes sunburn. Or if I have sunburn, I go and eat lots of ice cream. And they forget that those are correlated. Why? Because they happen when it's hot, when it's a sunny day. Did we get it? Does anybody have another example that can show correlation and causation? If it occurs to you, fine. If not, you will see it every day, and you might be having a dialogue with your friends, and somebody brings it, and this will pop into mind. Is this a correlation or a causation? If there is a traffic jam, what is causing it? Somebody will say, maybe whatever is the excuse. Once I was driving and they said, oh, it is just the amount of people who have come into Dubai is huge and now the roads are packed, etc. And I thought, okay, for sure that's true, There is a correlation there. But why on this highway and why it's like a car park? Then you drive a bit later and you see the real causation, which is there was an accident. And people, even though the accident is on the side of the road, it hasn't blocked the road, but you heard of rubbernecking, where people like to look. Everybody wants to have a look at what's happened. Anybody heard? We all like to view. And they slow down and they look, and at the end of the day, is a huge traffic jam for no reason, but people interested to look. Look out for this. You will face every day. So I'll go back a bit, ignore black swans, minimize regret, bias for action, right? So keep those in mind, because I'm going to hope that with the few I'll share with you, they're enough to carry you through. If you can add to them, there are many mental models, so much the better. So next one, avoid the path of least resistance. Why would we do that? Any example? What would be a path of, if you like, a burden and path of least resistance? Let me put here. Stay home, stay fit. Which has least resistance? Come on, interact with me. Don't leave me alone.
Stay home.
Stay home seems like easy thing. I am relaxed, etc. Well, or stay in bed or whatever. Stay fit takes energy, but the outcome always favors the path of most resistance. Should I go for this challenge? Usually, the least resistance, I'm busy, I don't want to do this. Or I've got other things. And this is, again, another mental model. Whatever challenge comes your way, if you say, avoid to yourself the path of least resistance, you'll find saying yes is more likely than no. And that is going to open so many doors for you. That is quite a powerful mental model. You've all heard of the Pareto principle, because we have even had a presentation on that. And that is invariably true in everything we do. 20% of what we do deliver 80% of the results. You have to be very clever to say, what are these 20%? 20% of the customers give you 80% of the income, the profit. 20% of our own people, the sales, give us 80% of the revenue. Why is true? I don't know, but it's true. So watch out, and if you find yourself busy, see if you can remember this and say, what 20% of what I do, who I deal with, etc., delivers 80% of the results. So we have a client, I think I'll be going with Amr to see, that keeps us busy, but causes us a lot more trouble than giving us results. But we try and keep connected. But actually, if you ask me, it definitely takes 80% of the effort to deliver 20% of the results. So are you smart enough to spot and say, no, I'm not wasting my time there? Or let me give extra attention to this person or this client. Oh, these are now the laws that really are so true, and I don't know why they're true. Murphy's law says, this is again a mental model, anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the most inappropriate time. You know what happened to me this morning? I don't know why we keep saying it this way. You know what happened? Obviously, you don't know, but let me tell you. What can go wrong in me delivering this webinar? Internet is down. The worst possible thing, 10 minutes before I want to open the meeting, it won't open because internet is down. Now, there could be Etisalat, it could be my systems, my router. It's the last thing I want to deal with when I just want to open this. So it happens. If it can happen, it will happen. And when? Usually at the most inopportune time. And don't ever expect that, no, this is not likely. I don't know why Murphy is low. Damn Murphy, because he caused a lot of trouble for all of us. But it's a fact of life. Expect it. Let's see. There are some razors. Those are very powerful mental models. And you really, really need to remember them. There are a few razors and nothing like them in power. Okay, so remember this picture, and as soon as something happens, the razor will come in mind and maybe you will deal with it. This is Occam razor. And this says, the answer that requires the fewest assumption is generally the correct one. So I hear sound of hoofs behind me, right? I tell it's an animal running. It could be, anyway, I am in a country, I'm not in Africa, and I hear the sound of hoofs. What is the most likely and require the least assumptions? That is a zebra or a horse? I don't think there will be many zebras in Europe, in Asia, whatever. So, and you will find this may sound like simplistic and crazy. You know, people say, for instance, no, nobody went to the moon. This was all made up. If you apply Occam razors, you say, how many assumptions have to be made for this to apply? One assumption is, obviously, somebody rigged up the whole moon landing, and there were at least 400,000 people involved in the project of going to the moon. So all of them would have to keep a secret and lie. So the number of assumptions are astronomical for the moon landing to be a hoax. And yet, till this day, go on YouTube and you will find enough material that it's a hoax. That the earth is flat. If you apply Occam razors, you say, how can the sun disappear or a ship disappear if it's, you have to make so many assumptions. It's not possible. And that is not just for extreme cases. Every day, especially in politics, 90% of it, apply Occam razors, you shoot it down. Let's look at another one. You may not be familiar with this one, but it's a damn useful one. Never prescribe to malice what could be attributed to stupidity. Let me give you an example. Back in the days, all of you are too young to remember, BCCI went bankrupt. This is a bank in the UAE. And the rumors were all these, it was managed by a management team from Pakistani mostly. And they started to say, they are a bunch of crooks. They did this, they did that. And it needs quite a bit of sophistication, to manage the bank and then manage to fleece all the depositors. But if you apply Hanlon's razor, you realize stupidity is far more common than malice. And I remember because I used to bank with them and I paid the price. Fortunately, Sheikh Zayed, bless his soul, eventually they collected all the money somehow and they paid us back. But I knew that management team that I used to meet with were just having fun, etc. They were not really professional banker in that real sense. So they opened branches all over Europe, very expensive. The branch in Leeds alone in the UK, marble and so on, for somebody who had very few clients in Leeds. And that to me is stupidity, the height of it. Far more costly than if those people were clever and they were crooks. So don't jump to that first. Jump to stupidity is more than likely human condition, means 9 out of 10 it'd be stupidity, stupid decisions. This one, anybody who worked directly with me may have experienced. Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. I often say to whoever I'm discussing with, when can we finish this? And they say, give us a week. Now, I know in the back of my mind, with a bit of focus, this will take maximum an hour or two. And if I agree to a week, it will wait, all week. And in the last 2 hours, they knuckle down and do it. And the reason I say, no, let's have it this afternoon, isn't really that I'm being very sort of difficult or whatever. I know when I give you a week and you accept a week and you demand a week, means your mind is going to be distracted with a pending task. I'm going to check on you. You're going to check on yourself. You will start to also think about it in different ways and come up with different solutions, whatever. Don't give, frankly, an hour or more to a task that can be done. You save yourself time, you save the person even more time. So always go for shorter, and don't think the person who asked for shorter is being reasonable. Actually, is making or she's making your life easier. Don't expand it, you will lose time. So hopefully some of these are sticking with you. Let me ask you quickly, which one comes to mind first when I say, give me one of the mental model that maybe speaks to you? Is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? Murphy's Law. Certainly that stuck with me this morning. Okay. This one. Okay. So, anybody wants to volunteer before we call the meeting to close?
Bias for action.
Bias for action. I like that one. Yes, that. Where are we? Let's go back to it. Yes. Anytime you were uncertain, afraid, confused, just act. You will see what happens. Okay, guys? I think that is us. And now, thank you very much. And if you want to comment and rate, I'd appreciate it. Thank you all.